Two heat waves to talk about this week. We've also got a rocket launch, and we might even throw in a little bit of maths. What's not to love about this week's Met Office Deep Dive? Welcome along. Thank you for being there. Thank you for watching. My name's Alex Deakin, a weather presenter and meteorologist here at Met Office HQ. If you are a fellow Met head like me and like most of the people watching, then do hit that like button. If you've not seen a Met Office deep dive before, make sure you're following us because we do this every Tuesday. A deep dive into some facet or some facets of what's really exciting about the weather at the moment. We love reading your comments. We love reading your suggestions. So please keep them coming as well. If you've got any questions, we often go through the questions in the deep dive and pick some of them out that we answer in our live show on Friday. So don't forget to tune into that. We go live on YouTube every Friday. Another reason to subscribe. If you watched last week's live on Friday, you'll have seen Honor talking to Stephen Keats, one of our deputy meteorologists, about the hot spell of weather coming up at the end of this week. So we were flagging it at the end of this week, and we're going to focus, as you might imagine, in this week's deep dive on the upcoming heat, along with a few other issues to contend with too. So yes, please do keep your comments. Please keep your questions coming in. As I say, we do read them and we do try and go through them. We do also take on board all your suggestions. And if you know someone else who's into weather, another Met head, then share the love. Let them know that we're on this. This channel known as YouTube, and that we do this every Tuesday. Please do. Okay, only one place to start really, and that is with the heat. We're talking a hot spell coming up. It will be a heat wave for some parts of the UK. Here's the bigger picture, the satellite sequence. Of course, we had a heat wave this time last week. Temperatures were peaking, and we saw very high temperatures at the start of last week. Hottest day, I think, was the 1st of July. And since then, we've seen the weather patterns changing a little bit. And you can see that quite nicely on the satellite image here. If you go through the sequence over the last 4 or 5 days, you can see where the system's moving in across the UK. And you can pick out where the jet stream is by the position of the cirrus, the high cloud. You can see the jet stream's here pretty much. And we have been on the cooler side of the jet. That's why we've had a relief from the heat. Back end of last week, we saw the change, and it was a much cooler weekend with some welcome rain in places. And you can see it. That jet stream dipping down here. We've been on the cooler side of it, but now if we pause it there, the current situation, you can almost see where the jet stream is going now, and we are now, instead of being on the cool side, we're emerging onto the warmer side of the jet. So let's take a look at that in a bit more detail. Here's the pressure pattern. There's the jet arching up to the north. It's dipping down here, but it's now dipping down to the east of the UK. So we're on the warm side. Yes, there are weather fronts trucking in, but there's also this unit of a high pressure, and that is what's going to bring us the largely sunny weather from the middle of the week onwards, and that is what will allow the temperatures to be rising because we're on the warm side of the jet. Fast forward to Wednesday, the jet really kind of dipping down here. There's not much to it at this stage, but it is starting to dip down, and by Thursday that's in more evidence coming down here and arching up over the UK. The high pressure's edging in, building in from the southwest. That high pressure is squashing the air. So that is heating things up. That's why we're seeing the temperatures rise. The high pressure is squashing the air. Obviously, the sun is beating down, and the sun's pretty strong at this time of year. So temperatures ticking up day by day. Thursday, probably the first day, we'll see over 30 degrees Celsius, but it won't be the last. By the time we get to Friday, well, that jet is really digging in now. It's a bit more about it. Proper kind of trough out in the Atlantic, and it's these troughs that generate the low pressures, pushing them up towards Iceland, and the high pressure is now just ambling a little bit to the east of the UK. You might imagine that the jet could push those weather fronts in, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. It looks like it's going to dig down further here and push up further here, keeping those weather fronts out here. That's where the cooler air is, behind this cold front. And I can show that if we put that on. That's where the cooler air is. Ahead of it, say temperatures building. We've got the warm air in place, and there's temperatures building by a process of the high pressure squashing the air and the sunshine coming through. And even by the time we get to Sunday, well, it may be edging a little bit closer. Not really until Monday that there's the possibility of something cooler coming in, but certainly Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we will see those temperatures on the high side, and not just across the southeast. we will see temperatures rising pretty much everywhere across the country this time around. Now, not all heat waves are the same. In fact, every heat wave, like every summer, is different. There's been a lot of chat in the press. We've been talking about it here ourselves, about 3 heat waves in a month. But actually, if you look at the maps, many parts of the UK have only really experienced 1 heat wave, and some haven't experienced any heat waves at all, as I can show you on this map here. If we take a look at what happened through the middle part of June, these are locations that saw 3 days in a row exceeding their heat wave criteria, and that's how we define a heat wave. Large parts of Wales, a good chunk of England did experience a heat wave through that middle part of June, the first hot spell. But notice parts of eastern England didn't reach that threshold. Most of Scotland didn't either, and only tiny little pockets across Northern Ireland. In the more recent hot spell, the more recent heat wave, for some, you can see the patches here where we had 3 days or more over that threshold. And you can see, yeah, a good part of the Midlands, southeast England, northeast England did, but most of Wales didn't. In fact, I think all of Wales didn't. All of Scotland didn't. All of Northern Ireland didn't. So yes, there's been a lot of chatter about how many heat waves we've seen, but every heat wave is different. Every hot spell is different, and large parts of the UK haven't experienced any heat waves yet, and only kind of a small area have actually had 2 in the past month. But where are we going to see a heat wave this time around? Well, if we put this map up, this is the projection for where we'll break the heat wave criteria. So 3 days in a row above the threshold temperatures. That varies across the land, but we're likely to see a heat wave across much of England, the east of Northern Ireland and eastern parts of Scotland as well. But even to the west of Northern Ireland and the northwest of Scotland, we may not have 3 days in a row, but temperatures here are also going to rise. So this hot spell will be more widespread than the last one. And as you can see, a large part of England and Wales expected to have a heat wave, be that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and in some locations, maybe even Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And there is a likelihood that many places will be still hot even into early next week, as we will see shortly. So let's take a look at what the temperatures are going to do, gradually rising basically over the next few days. If we fast forward to show the peak of the heat, it's likely to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Thursday, probably the first day we'll get over 30 Celsius somewhere across the southeast, and then more widely on Friday and Saturday and onto Sunday. But again, as I've talked about, it is slightly different. Notice it is slightly cooler around some of these coasts across the southeast. There's a hint as that high pressure builds to the east, we'll see a bit more of an easterly drift, so that it won't be as hot this time around for the likes of eastern England, for the likes of the southeast up towards Cambridgeshire and East Anglia. And this map shows that quite nicely. This is the anomalies, the heat compared to the average for the middle of July. And this shows it quite nicely if we move forward to Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This is how much the temperatures are above average. And if we pick out Friday, you can see here that parts of the east coast of East Anglia may actually be pretty close to average. And the highest temperatures compared to average are in this zone across East Wales, down towards southwest England, but also up into parts of Yorkshire too. So it's that area there which didn't necessarily have the heat last time around, particularly across East Wales and southwest England. Yes, it was hot here in the middle of June, but you didn't have the heat or as much heat last time around, and that's where we could see temperatures, more unusual temperatures. So in this zone, this darker red zone, we're talking 8-9 degrees or 9 degrees or more above the average. Notice also Scotland is warming up at this stage. And if we fast forward to Saturday, that's quite interesting because we've got those dark reds now across parts of northern Scotland and the east of Northern Ireland. So we may not get a heat wave here because we may not get 3 days in a row. But Saturday, that could be the peak of the heat here and across Scotland. In fact, the peak of the heat in Scotland is probably likely to be Sunday along the Moray Firth. Whereas further south, again, it is hot, much hotter than average across most of England and Wales. But notice again, this zone, which is often the hottest spot, will still be hot with temperatures getting into the high 20s, low 30s, but not as big an anomaly compared to the average as it will be further west. So that's what I'm talking about when I say every heat wave is different, and we'll see different values in different parts of the country. So yes, we are going to see slightly different shifts to the temperatures over the next few days. The heat's continuing to build. Why is it getting hot? Well, These maps are showing the thicknesses. Honor talked about the thicknesses in last week's deep dive. Basically, these are the 850 to 1,000 hectopascal thicknesses. Basically, you take the atmosphere from 1,000 hectopascals, 1,000 millibars, which is close to the surface, and you go up through the atmosphere until you get to 850 millibars or hectopascals. And basically, what you've got between those two pressure levels, the distance, the thickness, determines how hot the air is, how fundamentally hot the air is. Hotter air, more expanded, so you've got a bigger gap. You have more decameters, more distance between that 1,000 hectopascals and the 850 hectopascals if you've got the hotter air. And that's what this is showing here in the thickness pattern. On Thursday, still quite cool air across the northwest of Scotland. There's a weather front in here, and the highest temperatures, the highest thickness, the warmest air is in that zone from East Anglia down to the southeast of Wales. By Friday, we're getting the higher values across the core of the country, across the Midlands, into East Wales, those darker pinks and even the purple in there. Look at this, on Saturday, that's the peak for England and Wales, 142, that says 142 decameters. That's how high you've got to go up before you get to the 850 millibar, 142 in here. But notice across Scotland by Saturday, compared to Thursday, see that jump across Scotland and even Northern Ireland into the red zone here as well. So that's where the highest temperatures are likely to be on Saturday. But Scotland isn't done because Sunday sees the peak here. So on England and Wales, Sunday the air is slightly cooler, the thicknesses are slightly down, so the air won't be as hot on Sunday. We'll still see over 30 degrees, but it won't be as hot for England and Wales, probably low 30s. So the peak for England and Wales, probably 33 in this kind of zone across East Wales and the West Midlands. But the peak in Scotland could be on Sunday across the north. That's where the thickness is highest here before we potentially see a change into Monday. And again, more on that in a second because there is a bit of a question mark about that. But that's how the air is changing. So it's heating up. Thursday's the heat in the southeast. That's probably the first day over 30 degrees. Then more widely across England and Wales, the heat rising in Scotland and Northern Ireland. The peak of the heat across Scotland and Northern Ireland Saturday and then into Sunday, particularly across the north and in the south. Actually, temperatures across England and Wales probably a degree or so down. Still hot on Sunday compared to Saturday. So yeah, that's how the temperatures progress over the coming days. Just wanted to show you this as well. This is an interesting chart. Big thank you to Dan Holly, by the way. He's helped me a lot with today's presentation. He's our deputy chief today. He was giving a brief this morning. Every morning, the chief and then the deputy chief give us a brief on the current weather. Dan's been looking at this medium range and basically went through it brilliantly this morning and gave me all these charts, the ones that he used, because this is really quite interesting as well. This is the probability, the chance of reaching 30 degrees, showing there across a good chunk of England and Wales. But notice that shift, the higher chance there across the West Midlands, Herefordshire, Gloucestershire, into the east of Wales and down across the southwest as well, extending up into parts of Yorkshire. That's the chance of getting over 30 degrees on Friday. But you can see here by Saturday, parts of Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, just that chance increasing. So there's no chance Scotland and Northern Ireland getting to 30 on Friday, but by the time we get to Saturday, that chance has started to increase. And if we just play through into the next chart, hopefully it's going to show Sunday. Yeah, I just wanted to pick out there that north coast, the Moray Firth there, actually quite a high chance. It's a smaller zone on Sunday across Scotland, but there's a higher chance in the Moray Firth of reaching over 30 degrees Celsius. And that is in part due to the Föhn effect, with the breeze coming in over the mountains and lifting the temperatures. We've talked before about the Föhn effect in Scotland. That could play a significant part. So Sunday, the Moray Firth signalling there could get up to 30 degrees, perhaps 31, perhaps 32. Why is that significant? Well, it'll be hot for that part of the world, obviously, but potentially pushing station records as well. This map is showing the site records for the year, not just for July, although they're probably pretty similar. For many places, July is their hottest time of the year. But just notice on the Moray Firth there, those temperatures, 31.2, 31.6, that's their highest temperature on record, and we could be pushing records in this zone. Notice actually the records there in Stornoway, Outer Hebrides, 26.3 degrees Celsius. Yeah, it might not be far off that here even, because the warmth will even push into the far northwest as that weather front finally clears through the weekend. But a greater chance in this zone because the winds travel over the mountains, over the Cairngorms, and you get the Föhn effects. It comes down the other side. It's much drier air, it's much sunnier air, and you've had that heating, and so the temperatures rise because of the Föhn effect. It could be quite cool on the east, well, not cool, but temperatures could easily be 10 degrees lower on the east coast of Scotland if the breeze is coming in that direction, then up over the mountains and into there. So it all depends on that subtle position of the high pressure and where it sits as we get into the weekend. Take the jet stream off. The position of the high will dictate the winds. Just a subtle shift will determine which way the winds are blowing, and of course that will have a big impact because the sea, although it is very warm at the moment compared to average, again as we'll see shortly, it is still very cool compared to the land. So it does make a big difference, that subtle shift in the wind direction. Let's stick with those temperatures in the sea because, as I said, the sea temperatures at the moment are anomalously high. I did say at the start that we had two heat waves to talk about. I talked about the heat waves as the temperatures over the land, but we're actually already experiencing a heat wave, a marine heat wave. The Met Office wrote a blog about that. Ryan wrote a blog about that earlier this week. You can see that on the Met Office website. And this is the current temperature anomaly in the sea surface temperature. It's taken from last week. And the darker reds, where we have a marine heat wave of category 2 or 3, those patches around here. So temperatures are well above average, 17, 18 degrees through the channel, even some pockets of 19, even 20 Celsius. Across northern Scotland, closer to average temperatures here, which means there are temperatures in the sea are about 13, 14 degrees Celsius. So yeah, if you think about the temperature in the sea here, 13, 14 degrees compared to the temperature over the land that it could be at the weekend, we're talking close to 20 degrees higher, certainly high teens more temperature on the land. So a lot of people will be heading to the beach this weekend. Two things to be aware of. Sea temperatures, although well above average, are still cool. You can still suffer from shock, from cold water shock. So take the advice of the RNLI. There's loads of really good stuff, loads of good advice on the RNLI. I would follow them on social media. They post really good stuff on TikTok as well, the RNLI. So go and give them a follow. And there's lots of good advice about how to deal with cold water shock, because although it is warm in the seas around, it is still going to be cold relative to the temperatures that we are seeing. So that is the second heat wave I wanted to talk to you about. The next question, how long will this heat wave last? We've seen that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 days of hot weather pretty much across the UK, and the models are in really good agreement. So, you know, sometimes at this kind of stage, there'll be a lot of uncertainty about the weekend. Well, there'll be bits and pieces of cloud or the exact wind direction, and that could generate some hard, low cloud, misty conditions around some coasts. So that kind of level of detail, yeah, okay, we can't pin that down at this stage. But the models are rock solid that we're going to see high pressure moving in, move to the east, hot weather for the vast majority into the weekend. The big question mark then comes, when is it going to change? And we saw earlier, the cold air is, well, not cold air, the cooler air is tucked in behind this weather front here, which gets closer and closer and closer and closer, but never really kind of pushes in. It stays out. So for the weekend, we are still looking at the hot weather sitting across the UK. But early next week, that could change, with the emphasis on could. That's just looking at one model. That's just the Met Office model. As I say, most of the main models do agree, but when we're talking this kind of range, we look at ensemble forecasts. That's how we generated the chance of seeing 30 degrees by running the model many, many times, and that gives you a chance. So if 2 of the models out of the 50 are saying that they're going to get over 30 degrees, then that would be a 4% chance. So that's how the ensembles work. And in terms of this, who doesn't love a spaghetti plot? This is showing the potential position of the cold front and therefore the cold air. Now it looks a bit of a mess, and it is, but actually, you know, I've seen a lot worse. I was going to compare it to my son's drawing, but actually he's 5 now and he's getting quite good at drawing, so that would be a bit harsh, a bit unfair on him. But this is showing the potential. When you run the model many times, each of these blue lines is showing where that run of the model wants the cold front to be at midday on Monday, and the green line is where the main run is, the deterministic run, the main computer model run when we just look at the one. That's where the green line is. This is from the European model, so that's the ECMWF position of the cold front. So you probably can't see it very well. So I'll zoom in a little bit, and maybe I will see if I can draw on the British Isles. What colour should we use? Let's use red. So there's East Anglia, down to the southwest, there's Wales, and there's Scotland. So you can probably see it a little bit better. Now there's Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland. So the European model has the cold front in here, pretty much slicing right down across the UK. But you can see that the main one is ahead of most of the ensembles. Most of the other runs are further back. So if you just took that one, you'd think, okay, it is going to turn cooler for Western Scotland, Northern Ireland on Monday. But when you run it many times, you see that actually that's not necessarily the preferred solution. The most likely outcome is that it's somewhere back here because there's more of them back here. If you want more on ensembles, there's a good video on our YouTube channel about what they are and what they mean. You can look that up. But it's a higher chance that the colder air is further back here than it is pushing in. So there's a bit of a question mark about when we see the cooler conditions coming in across the UK. But it does look, most of the models do bring something a bit cooler in by Tuesday or Wednesday next week, but there's a big question mark about the timing on that. Another way to use ensembles is with this distribution, these graphs, where this is called a meteogram. This one is for a place called the Moor of Granary. Again, big thank you to Dan for spotting this out. It's just inland from the Moray Firth, and this is showing the temperature profile here. And this one, temperature's going up, 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 peaking here. The purple barbs up here, that's the cloud. You can see the cloud drops for the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, so more sunshine. And this is showing the chance of precipitation, how much rain we're likely to see. So it stays dry, and then there's an increasing chance of seeing some rain from Monday onwards. You can see it does dip. The temperature profile dips down here once we get past Monday, but there's still quite a bit of uncertainty, and it just shows how high those temperatures could get. That's the 30-degree. Again, we'll zoom in a little bit because I can show you that versus Swindon. So this is the Moor of Granary versus Swindon on the lower chart here, and that's showing those temperatures rising and then probably dipping as we go into the early part of next week, with that question mark about when, due to the position of that cold front. This is for Swindon. So in the south, how long is the heat going to last? Greater certainty. The box and whiskers plots are smaller for Swindon, that we're going to see those temperatures, and again up over 30 degrees for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, there is a chance that cold front could be through further, so that's why that tail is a little longer. Oh, gone down. Let's go back to there, play it through. I've lost it. I'll come back to it. There we go. That's probably the best thing to do. It does dip off even in Swindon next week, but there's a hint there that it actually may start to rise next week. So although it may turn a little cooler as we go into next week, there is no guarantee that we're just going to see that fresher air and all of a sudden we'll see Atlantic conditions. It's more likely actually across the south, yeah, temperatures dip a little bit, but the warm air may well stay close by, and temperatures could easily stay in the mid to high 20s well into next week. So yes, hot this weekend, probably turning a bit cooler early part of next week, but the heat may not be too far away across the south and even further north. Temperatures even in the Moor of Granary, generally the most likely scenario is that they're still above average here too. Aidan will have more. I want to just confirming who it is. I'm pretty sure it's Aidan doing the 10-day trend tomorrow. So the 10-day trend tomorrow, another reason to subscribe. You can watch him. No, it's not, is it? No, it's not Aidan tomorrow. I think it's Honor tomorrow, actually doing the 10-day trend. I should have checked that before I came, but watch the 10-day trend tomorrow, and whoever it is will have more on that and more detail all about that. So, yes, hot this weekend, and then it turns a little bit cooler. What else did I want to talk to you about today? Oh, my visit to Germany. This time last week, I mean, you think 33 is hot. This time last week, I was in 36 degrees in Germany because I was very lucky to go to EUMETSAT, which is the headquarters of EUMETSAT, which is based in Darmstadt, which is just south of Frankfurt in Germany. And EUMETSAT basically run the operations with weather satellites across Europe. And that's me with an old weather satellite. But I was there to watch the launch of a brand new satellite. So last Tuesday evening, I was very excited in Cape Canaveral. a rocket went up, and on board that rocket was a very, very important payload, a brand new satellite. That is the glorious picture of the rocket taking off in Cape Canaveral. That's a post on Instagram by UmetSat. Go and follow them, actually. Really interesting posts across social media, UmetSat. That's their post on Instagram showing the rocket being launched into space. And on board was this little beauty. Say little beauty, quite a big beauty. That is a scale model of the actual satellite that was launched. And it's a very special satellite. I'm just going to play through. It's a bit too fast, that, isn't it, really? So let's get rid of that. Let's go back to the rocket launch, because that's a thing of beauty. Let's go back to that. So yes, on board this rocket, MTG-S1, the second in the third series of satellites, UmetSat satellites. And this one, the second in the third generation. So we've had the second generation. The first generation started in the 70s, and then through the noughties, there's been the second generation. And this is part of the third generation. The second one in a series of 6. This one's really interesting, it really is a game changer, because it changes the way that we look at Europe. It's going to give us new pictures every 30 minutes of a temperature profile. So it's actually going to paint a 3D picture of the temperature through the atmosphere, temperature and humidity. And that's going to be a game changer, because it will give us a better idea of thunderstorms. Spot thunderstorms before they form. It'll give us a better idea of the life cycle of thunderstorms and where they go and where they're likely to go next. It'll make us better at forecasting them. It's also going to give us a better idea at forecasting things like fog, mist and low cloud, and not just one sensor on this satellite, but many, and another one, the Copernicus Sentinel-4, which is going to be better at picking out things like particulates, be better at monitoring wildfires and aerosols in the atmosphere that can have serious health impacts. And so, yeah, a lot of really cool data going to come out from this new satellite. The data should start to be available next year. It's gone up now. It's in a transit orbit. Then they'll put it in the right orbit shortly. And yeah, in a couple of years, it'll be fully operational. But this time next year, hopefully, we should be getting some data. So a very exciting launch. And I was very lucky to be able to go to Germany. And there's more on that on the Met Office LinkedIn page if you want to see. But I did want to show one more thing about the satellites, because I want to show you this diagram, which I stole off the NOAA website. The two different types of orbit of satellites. Now, the one that went up last week, and where most weather satellites, or many weather satellites, live, is in this orbit here. It's called a geostationary orbit. And it's important because it's sitting over the same place. So a lot of weather satellites will sit over the same place so that you can get an idea of how things are developing, how things are changing through the day. So the weather satellites, we call them geostationary satellites, and they sit above a certain place, and this one will sit above Europe and take pictures of Europe, bits of North Africa as well, and parts of the Atlantic, but it's going to sit above the same place by doing this orbit. It's further out than this orbit, and that's called a polar orbiter. A different type of satellite is a polar orbiter. That's generally a lot closer to Earth, and so you can get higher resolution pictures. And it goes around the poles. And so you only get a picture above where you are probably about once a day. If you look at the same time every day, you get the same picture, but you're only getting one a day. So there's different advantages to those different types of orbit of satellites. This one's traveling faster. This one, if you want that in the same position, it's got to be moving at the same speed as the Earth. So that's at a set distance away, 36,000 kilometers. That is where you have to be, just under 36,000 kilometers. That's where you have to be if you want to sit over the Earth, move at the same speed, and take the same, be able to take the same picture every half an hour, because you're sitting it, so it moves around. So if you're under it, you see it, and it's just moving around with you. Whereas this one, the polar orbiter, is moving much faster. It's closer, so it gets better, higher resolution pictures. But you only get one a day because of its orbit going around like that. And I just wanted to do some maths because I thought this was quite fun. Maybe it's not, maybe it's just me. But it was a guy called Kepler Kepler was a scientist from way back when, and he was the guy who basically worked out that planets go in elliptical orbits around the sun. He was following on from the work from a guy called Copernicus. He was one of the first people to suggest that the sun was the center, it was the Earth was going around the sun, rather than what had been popular belief until that the Earth was the center of the universe and everything was going around the Earth. And that's kind of what you'd think, wouldn't it? If you were sitting on the Earth and you saw the sun coming up and going down, you'd think the sun was going around us. But we now know that that's not actually true. The Earth is going around the sun. And Kepler came up with three famous laws that defines the way that we work out what planets are doing. Now, the third law is the most important one here. So let's do a little bit of drawing. That's the sun. This is good, isn't it? And the planets go around the sun like that. They don't go in a circular orbit, they go in an elliptical orbit like that. Now, this distance here is known as the major axis, and that distance there is known as the minor axis. Now, Kepler's third law states that the time it takes to go around this orbit squared is directly proportional to this distance here, a cubed. The maths works out, there's a constant in there, the maths works out depending on the mass of the Earth and the mass of the Earth, pi, you can work out then what t is in relation to a. Now t has to be the same as a day. So, because you want it to sit in the same place. So it has to be going round the Earth at the same speed as the sun, effectively, or the same speed that we're going around the sun. So it sits in at the same speed as the Earth is rotating. So t squared is directly proportional to a cubed. And when you put the maths in, that tells you that a, when you put in the maths, is actually equal to about 42,000 kilometers. Now, those of you who are paying attention will say, but I said the satellite sits at 36,000 kilometers, and that's because that is to the distance to the center of the Earth, and so you've got to take the radius of the Earth off. So a minus r is equal to 36,000 kilometers. So that is the distance, just under, that all these geostationary satellites sit at, so they can sit in the same place and look down on Earth and take the same picture every half an hour. And that's the difference between a geostationary satellite that's staying in the same place and those polar orbiter ones that are going round and round and round. Hope you like my maths. Is it better than my art? That's the big question. And yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Little bits of a sidetrack, but I quite like that because I studied astrophysics at university. So I thought you'd enjoy that. Let me know in the comments if you did or if you didn't. But that's pretty much it from me for this week. Again, big thank you to Dan Holly, Deputy Chief today, and to Neil Armstrong, who is the Chief today. Both helped me out quite a lot with talking about today's temperatures. Lots of things for you to check out. Go and check out the UMETSAT. Go and check out our other videos about ensembles. As well, make sure you give us the thumbs up. That would be really helpful as well, and give us a follow as well, and then you won't miss out on the 10-day trend tomorrow. But thank you very much for watching this week's Met Office Deep Dive. Don't forget to tune in for Friday's Live, when we could be answering some of your questions, so keep them coming in the comments. Thanks very much. Goodbye.